Okay, students, in this video we're going to continue with some of the components for the engine practice example. Again, just like before, um, for the most part we're going to continue on with drawing tools, dimensioning, geometric constraints, extrude, revolve, and sketches in a new phase. Now, for this specific component, we're only going to do an extrude. We're no longer going to do revolve and sketches in new phase, but we might do this in upcoming components. Okay. Again, to fully define a sketch, we need a position X, position Y, size and angle. This is still true. We're still going to follow that, so make sure you understand how to do those things. Now, for the piston rod, so this is the second component in this series. What we'll do is we're going to use Extrude to create this model. Of course, you get a sketch, and then you get a final view of the actual component. Okay. Now, I didn't specify that, but at the end, all you need to do is extrude it by 4 millimeters. And you have everything else you need. So all of the units are still in millimeters. Now we're heading into a little bit more complex sketch, but still pretty simple to do. Okay, we're gonna take it step by step, and we'll try to complete it. Now, if whenever you get a sketch that looks something like this, what I recommend you do is first look for a starting point. So in this case, we can see that we have a rectangle, a circle, two circles here at the bottom, and then a couple of lines, right? So from here, if you had to pick a starting point, which one would you pick? So think about that for a second or two. Things to consider is one, what's the biggest feature, and two, where's that feature located? Okay. So in this case, we have a big feature down here that's located right at my origin. So we have two circles here. They're both concentric. They're centered at the origin. So this is probably a good starting point. Okay. And then here at the top, I have another rectangle with a circle on the center of it. Okay. So let's go ahead and start at the bottom. So we have two circles. One's 23 millimeters in diameter, the other is 20 millimeters in diameter. So let's start by creating those two, and then we'll take it step by step. Okay. So I'm gonna jump into Fusion. Again, notice how it's a brand new model. So what I'll do is I'll save it first. So I'll save this as my piston rod component. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll start my first sketch. Okay. So I'll go there, make sure I'm in millimeters. Okay, I'm good. And then type C for a circle. And then my first circle had to be 23. My second circle had to be 20. Okay, so there it is. I have my two circles. So 23 and 20. Okay, that first part is done. So again, nothing crazy complicated, nothing too hard. Okay, now that first part is done. Now what I want to do is I want to first create that rectangle, and then I want to create that circle on the inside. Now one main thing that I'm missing here is that y-axis right there. So I'm going to create that first, and then the rectangle. Okay, now my rectangle on the top has to be 15 by 10. Okay, so, and of course it has to be sort of centered this way, and it has to be off of the origin by 45. So 15, 10, 45. Okay, let me jump back into Fusion, and I'm going to first create that construction line. So again, L and then X for construction, and then I'm going to create a rectangle. So it has to be 15 by 10, like so. Okay, and then that rectangle has to be off of my origin by 45. There we go. Okay. Now notice how it's not centered right now. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. What I'll try is first I'll do a midpoint, and as you can see, that centers it pretty good. Okay. So it centers this horizontal with the vertical, and we're good now. Okay. Now, for the rest of the components, we're just missing 2 lines, okay, on each side. So we're missing this first line and then the other one inside, and then we're missing this outside and the other one inside on the other side. Okay. So for the of course the circle as well. So the circle has to be 5 and it has to be centered vertically and horizontal. I was missing that one, so let me add that real quick. So circle of 5 in diameter. Circle 5. Of course, it's centered about that Y. It's already there. And then I'm missing my vertical, so it has to be centered there. Now this one is D4, so D4 divided by 2, and that's right at half. Okay. So I have that. Now what I'll do here is I'll first create 2 lines, 2 diagonals, one that looks like that and then the other one on the other side. Okay, and let's go back to the presentation and take a look at what's going on with those outside lines first. So as we can see, this outside line is touching my outer circle right at the point where it's tangent. Okay, and we can see that icon right there. So it's tangent to my outer circle, and it also has an angle, so it has that 80-degree angle, right? Same thing for the other side. Of course, it's just a mirror image. Okay, so let me jump into Fusion. Now, one thing that I'm missing here is my x-axis. So what I'll do is I'll add that x-axis, so line and then construction, so LX. And then what I'll do is first I'll make this line tangent to my outer circle. Okay, so tangent that line to my outer circle, and then tangent that line to my outer circle. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to type D in my keyboard for dimension, and I'm going to select that line and my x-axis. And as you can see, I'm building that angle between the two, and then I just make them be 80 degrees. Okay, same thing for the other line. So that diagonal to my x-axis, make it equal to 80, and we're good. Now, as you can see, this line is not touching that horizontal, and then we have some extension down here. So there's multiple ways we can fix that. Now, for if it overextends, you can just type T in your keyboard for the trim tool, and you can just trim away the excess, like so and like so. But in cases like this where it doesn't reach, then you can just do a consigning constraint. Okay, now be careful with the consigning constraint, because all you have to do is select the endpoint. Okay, in this case, I want to make sure that this endpoint is touching that horizontal line. Same thing for the other side. So endpoint to that horizontal line. Okay, and there we have it. We have those 2 diagonals. If we go back to the presentation, you should be able to see that all we're missing is the inner diagonals, right? And all they are is just parallel lines to the outside ones, and they're off by 3 millimeters. Okay, so there's a distance of 3 millimeters between those 2 lines and between those 2 lines. Okay, so let's go into Fusion again. I'll go create a line. Just like before, I'm gonna first create a line, like so, and then on the other side as well. And now I'll add all of the constraints that I need. Okay, so I'll make them parallel. So this line parallel to this one. Excuse me. And then these other 2 lines parallel to each other. Okay. Now also notice how they're not touching, right? So I'm gonna fix that with the consigning constraint again. So endpoint to that inner, and then endpoint to that circle. Okay, same thing on the top. Just repeat that process. Okay, now we're missing one very important part, which is the distance between the two lines, right? So I messed that up. Control Z, dimension D, and then select the two lines, and then that distance has to be 3. Same thing for this other side. Okay, 3, and we're good. Notice how my entire sketch is composed of only black lines. Okay, that means that everything's fully defined, fully constrained, everything's good to go. Okay, now the only thing we're missing is up here. We have sort of this corner. I don't like that corner because that's going to be a spot of stress concentration probably. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to round off that corner. Okay, and I'll do that by first trimming away the excess, so trimming away that line and this line. But notice how as soon as I do that, some weird stuff happens, right? So it deleted the midpoint constraint, but it's okay, I can still fix that. So all I'll do is I'll give it a distance from here to here, and the distance has to be D3 divided by 2. Okay, now the reason I deleted those lines is because I want to have just the corner. I don't want to have anything extra. Okay, the reason for that is when I use the fillet feature, this should be able to help me really constrain it. Okay, so that distance or that radius has to be 0.8. All you have to do is put 0.8, enter, and then you're good to go. It's gonna define both of them. Okay, so now we just rounded off those two corners. Down here we also might have like an excess piece of circle, so I can just trim away that, and we should be good to go. So that is now a single outline or a single profile that I can then extrude. Okay, so I'll go ahead and finish the sketch here. Type E on my keyboard for extrude, and then select just that area. And then for my distance, I just have to give it a 4mm extrusion, like so, and we're good to go. Go ahead and save it, and I'll stop the video here. I'll continue with the next component later on. Okay.